Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. When a burned-out lawyer escapes to his inherited lakeside retreat, he expects peace until a suburban HOA declares war on his land. What begins with signs and trespassers spirals into fraud, sabotage, and a courtroom showdown. This isn't just a property dispute, it's war. When I first rolled up that gravel road leading to the old Hill House, tires crunching slow under the weight of 30 years of family history, I didn't think peace would be a problem. 900 acres of prime Tennessee woodland, untouched shoreline, a sky so wide you could forget the rest of the world existed. This was the quiet I'd chased for half my life. I had a thermos full of black coffee, a glove box full of land titles, and the ashes of my grandfather, Jacob sitting next to me in a cedar box. I figured the ghosts on this land were the only ones I'd need to make peace with. Turns out I was wrong. The living ones were far worse. I'd left Memphis 6 weeks earlier, burned out on billable hours, tired of clients with fake problems and real money. I'd finally done the one thing I'd promised my grandfather before he died. Keep the lake ours, son. He used to say it like a prayer, as if the water could hear him. He left the property to me outright. 900 acres, a creaky old house with a wraparound porch, a collapsing boathouse, and a 28-acre lake so still it looked like glass cut from the sky. That lake was the kind of place you whisper near, even when you're alone. The trouble started about 10 days after I moved in. I was down by the dock, restaining the old cedar boards, when a teenage boy came jogging across the shoreline like he owned it. He had earbuds in, sunglasses on, and the kind of oblivious energy only high school kids and middle managers seem to generate. He gave me a nod, half wave, and ran straight out onto the dock before I stopped him. "Hey," I said without raising my voice. "You know this is private property, right?" He paused, looked at me like I'd spoken Greek. "Dude, this is the HOA lake. Everyone runs here." I stood up, wiped my hands on a rag. "No, it's not. This is Jacob's property. Been private since 1972. The kid laughed like I was the weirdo. "That's not what my mom says." He jogged off before I could respond. I figured it was a misunderstanding. Maybe a neighbor's kid. Maybe a bad map. That theory disintegrated 3 days later when I received the first letter. White envelope, HOA letterhead, Clear Shore Waterside Property Owners Association. Inside was a typed, oddly formal demand that I submit an application to formally join the association and review community water access expectations. It warned that failure to comply may result in limitations of shoreline access per HOA regulations. I reread that line 3 times, then chuckled. I wrote back the same day. A polite letter, attached a certified copy of the deed, highlighted the language. All water rights and shoreline access deeded solely to Jacob A. Jacobs and his descendants in perpetuity. Sent it certified return receipt. I figured that'd be the end of it. It wasn't. A week later, I noticed something strange down by the shoreline. Brand new signs. Bright blue aluminum staked every 50 feet along the water. Clear Shore Lake. Members only. Private HOA access. I stood there blinking like an idiot, holding a mug of lukewarm coffee. At first, I thought it was vandalism. Then I realized it was worse. This wasn't vandalism. This was organized. The next few days were chaos. I found folding chairs left out near my fire pit, a family of 4 picnicking 20 feet from my dock. Someone left a pile of firewood stacked neatly near the edge of my boat ramp, as if preparing to build a communal fire. I confronted a woman who had tied her inflatable kayak to my pier and was unloading snacks. She looked at me without shame. "Oh, Karen said the lake's community use now. You must be the new guy." I asked her who Karen was. She looked surprised. "Karen Lindell, the HOA president. You should really talk to her." I tried. I really did. I went to the Clear Shore HOA office. Nothing but a double-wide trailer with a logo on the door and a receptionist who chewed gum like it owed her money. I asked to speak with the president. She gave me a number and a time slot. "She's very busy," she said, as if Karen were some kind of local dignitary instead of the woman trying to claim my lake like it was the Oregon Trail. Instead of waiting, I went home and did what I do best. I documented. I took drone footage of the signs, photos of the trespassers, GPS stamps. I saved copies of every letter. Then I got a knock on my door. It was Karen, 50-something, stiff blonde haircut, pink visor like a suburban tiara. She smiled like she'd just caught a raccoon under her porch and was pretending it was a lost puppy. "You must be Mr. Jacobs," she said. Harris, I corrected. You're Karen. That's right. President of the Clearshore Waterside Association. I'm aware, I said, stepping out onto the porch. You've been posting signs on my property. She blinked once, then gave a little laugh. Oh, those aren't on your property. They're near the shoreline, and according to our maps, that shoreline is now designated for limited public access. I held up the deed I'd already had laminated for easy reference. This says otherwise. She didn't even glance at it, just crossed her arms. Mr. Jacobs, I don't know what kind of arrangement your grandfather thought he had, but you're surrounded by our community now. We've lived here for over 10 years. You're the newcomer. This lake has always been used by residents. You can't just privatize nature. I stared at her for a long second. Karen, the lake is mine. Legally. This isn't some community pond with ducks and a gazebo. This is deeded land. I don't want HOA parties on my shoreline. I don't want a dock full of paddleboards. I want you off my property. Her smile faded. We'll see about that, she said, and turned to leave without another word. By the following week, the signs had doubled. My dock had footprints on it every morning. Someone dumped a pile of beer cans under the pines near the fire pit. And when I called the sheriff's office, the deputy who came out shrugged and said, "Looks like a civil matter." We don't enforce HOA disputes. I stood on the edge of my own lake that night, looking out at the moon on the water, and thought about the way wars used to start over land, territory, rights, borders. I wasn't ready to admit it yet, but I felt the first tremor of it in my spine, that quiet certainty that this wasn't going away, that Karen wasn't done, that I had inherited more than just water and trees. I had inherited a fight. The next letter was less polite. It arrived folded into an envelope that looked like it had been sealed by someone in a hurry and possibly in anger. Inside, a formal notice of HOA non-compliance, complete with bolded language about community access rights, membership dues in arrears, and a last warning before escalation. There was even a line that suggested failure to respond could result in administrative limitations on property privileges. That last part made me laugh. The HOA had as much authority over my land as a lemonade stand had over the IRS. Still, I responded. I sent another certified letter, now including topographic surveys and historical plats. I printed out a 25-year-old article from the Knoxville Gazette that profiled my grandfather and the legacy of Jacobs Lake, including photos of him fishing solo on a misty morning back in 1999. It didn't matter. 2 days later, a group of neighborhood kids rolled up to my dock on rented kayaks like they were storming the Bastille. I walked down to greet them. They looked up, confused. Karen said it was fine. One of them muttered. Of course she did. I installed motion-triggered cameras that same week. 2 facing the dock, one aimed at the fire pit, another mounted discreetly on an old hickory tree, pointing straight at the makeshift trail that now led from the HOA neighborhood through the brush and onto my shoreline. And sure enough, the footage started rolling in. Day after day, strangers using my land like a public park. A guy in golf shorts teaching his kid how to skip rocks. A group of teens having a full-on barbecue complete with Bluetooth speaker blaring country pop and a cooler I hoped didn't contain alcohol. I started calling the sheriff's department every time. After the 4th or 5th call, Deputy Langston showed up looking more tired than annoyed. Look, Mr. Jacobs, I get it. I really do. But unless they break something or you catch them in the act of damaging property, it's hard for us to press charges. Trespassing is a gray area when it's near water. Not this water, I said, holding up another copy of the deed. There's no gray area here, just a bunch of suburban squatters acting entitled. Langston sighed. Then sue 'em. Civil court'll make it stick. I didn't want to sue anyone, not yet. I just wanted to be left alone. Then came the map. It showed up on the HOA's official community bulletin board, printed in color and laminated like it was some kind of sacred relic. A full-scale Clear Shore community development overview with walking paths, green spaces, and dead center in the layout. A lake marked Clear Shore Waterside Lake Common Use Zone. My property, my shoreline, my name nowhere in sight. I stood in front of that board and stared at the thing like it was a war declaration. A few neighbors gathered behind me. One man, balding, wearing a shirt that read "Freedom isn't free," mumbled something about community access being God-given. Another woman said, "We've always used the lake. Always. Your granddad was nice about it." "Yeah, well," I said, "he's dead now. And I'm not nice." They didn't like that answer. I didn't care. By that evening, I was receiving emails, not just from the HOA, but from residents. Angry ones. One accused me of destroying neighborhood trust. Another said, "You moved in and ruined the harmony we had. We were a family before you came." A third simply read, "We will not be fenced out. Water is life." The best part? That last one was from someone who lived 4 streets away and had never once set foot near the lake until this drama started. It didn't stop there. One morning, I came out to find my mailbox knocked off its post and flattened on the ground. Another day, someone spray painted the word thief on a signpost near the trailhead. I began carrying a sidearm on morning walks, just in case. And then, like clockwork, Karen returned. She was wearing a different visor this time, navy blue, and held a clipboard like it was a royal decree. "We've conducted a community vote," she said, standing on the edge of my driveway. 84% of residents agree that the lake should be annexed as a shared amenity. The map has been submitted to the county for review. I stared at her. Annexed? You think this is a colonial expansion? You can't just redraw land boundaries with a goddamn Crayola map and a committee vote. She ignored that. "We've submitted a request for official jurisdictional reassessment. You'll be notified by the county. In the meantime, we're asking for good faith cooperation, shared dock access, picnic stations, maybe a community paddleboard rack." I laughed. I couldn't help it. "Lady, the only thing I'll share is a restraining order." Her eyes narrowed. "You're creating division." "No," I said. "I'm enforcing ownership. Big difference." That night, I had a call with a friend of mine, Ken Bristow, former county land surveyor turned whistleblower. He still had contacts in the records office. I gave him the name Glenn Crane, one of the HOA board members I'd seen hovering near the new map. Turns out Glenn used to work for the county GIS office. And it also turns out that someone had quietly submitted an altered boundary overlay showing the lake as unclaimed municipal green space, a convenient fiction designed to make the HOA's claims appear legitimate on paper. That's when it clicked. They weren't just bluffing, they were setting up a legal foundation to take the lake. I stared out the window that night, watching as a couple in matching jogging outfits walked a little too close to the dock, then turned around when they saw the cameras. This wasn't going to end with letters and conversations. This was war. And Karen was just getting warmed up. Ken called me back the next morning, his voice tight with caffeine and fury. "You were right," he said. "That boundary overlay, total fiction. Crane submitted it 2 weeks ago using an outdated template and a signature that doesn't match the registrar's. It's fraud, Harris. Straight up cadastral fraud." I was already sitting at my desk with a yellow legal pad when he called, scribbling timelines and names. My instincts had kicked into full lawyer mode the second I saw that map. Now I had the one thing HOA hadn't counted on: leverage. "Can you get me copies?" I asked. "Already sent them to your email, PDFs and raw GIS data, and Harris. They submitted it under your parcel ID." It's not just a fake boundary. They tried to make it look like you never existed. That hit me like a cold hammer. Not only were they trying to absorb my land into their little HOA fiefdom, they were trying to erase my name from the records entirely. I contacted the county records office myself later that day, filed a formal complaint, and scheduled a meeting with the deputy clerk. They were polite but cagey. Someone had already called from Clear Shore Waterside, concerned about misinformation. I made it clear that I had legal representation, historical ownership documentation, and about 600 gigabytes of evidence. Backing up my claim, the tone changed. While I was at it, I called a buddy in the Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation, asked him to run a quiet check on any permit requests or construction filings near my shoreline. Sure enough, a provisional zoning request had been submitted by Clear Shore Waterside to install a floating dock and small recreational facility on my lakefront. I wasn't dealing with confused suburbanites anymore. This was organized, tactical, intentional. These people were playing chess with fake documents and smiling faces, so I stopped playing nice. I installed 2 more cameras, night vision enabled, solar powered, no blind spots. Put up fresh private property, trespassers will be prosecuted signs every 20 feet. And then I walked down to the HOA Welcome Center, still that same double wide with a logo on it, and served Karen Lindell with a notarized cease and desist. She took it like I'd handed her a parking ticket. "This is ridiculous," she said, glancing at the document like it was a grocery receipt. We're not trying to take anything. We're clarifying usage boundaries." "No," I said. "You're forging cadastral overlays and trying to gaslight a legal title holder into surrendering private land. That's textbook fraud. And this cease and desist is the polite version. Next one comes with court dates." She didn't like that. Her smile disappeared like someone shut off a light switch. "You really want to go to war over this?" she said, voice tight. "Lady," I replied, "you declared war the second you printed that bullshit map." The next escalation came 48 hours later. I woke up to the sound of voices down by the water, men shouting, wood clanking. I grabbed my jacket and headed for the dock. 3 workers in safety vests were unloading lumber from a flatbed trailer that had somehow made it halfway down my forest access trail. They'd already marked off an area with orange flags and staked in a sign that read, "Future Site, Clear Shore HOA Dock and Pavilion." I didn't say a word. I just walked back up the hill, pulled the SD card from one of the trail cams, and called the sheriff. Deputy Langston showed up 20 minutes later, this time with another cruiser behind him. I handed over the footage and pointed them toward the trail. To their credit, they didn't screw around. The workers were detained on the spot. Not arrested, but questioned thoroughly, and eventually cited for trespassing and unauthorized construction on private land. One of them tried to argue that the lady from the HOA said it was fine. Another muttered, "We just do what we're told." Karen wasn't on site that day, but she might as well have been. Her fingerprints were all over it. That evening, she called me directly. First time she'd done that. I didn't pick up, so she left a voicemail. "You really think this ends with you winning," she said, voice tight. "You're not a community. You're a roadblock. People talk, Harris. People get tired of being fenced out. Careful who you push." I saved the voicemail, sent it to my lawyer. Then I poured a whiskey and sat out on the porch, watching the mist rise from the lake. It was quiet, finally, but it didn't feel like peace. The next morning, someone had dumped 3 bags of trash on my shoreline. Fast food wrappers, beer cans, diapers, and right in the center of it, a laminated flyer from the HOA. "Community Cleanup Day. Thank you for participating." They were sending a message. So was I. I posted the video of the dock crew online, tagging the HOA, tagging Karen, tagging the sheriff's office, the county clerk, the assessor's office, and 3 local news outlets. Within 6 hours, the video had 3,000 views. By sundown, it had over 12,000, and that's when a journalist named Owen Blake reached out. He introduced himself as a contributor for the Tennessee Tribune, said he was covering local land disputes and neighborhood governance. I could already hear the angle forming in his head. The evil recluse versus the friendly HOA, the outsider hoarding nature's bounty. I declined his request for comment, but I knew he'd talk to Karen. Let him. She'd already written the script. Now I was going to burn the stage. 2 days after the video went viral, a drone flew over my lake. I was drinking coffee on the porch when I heard it, soft mechanical buzzing, like an angry mosquito with a GoPro strapped to its back. It circled twice, dipped low over the dock, then climbed up and zipped off toward the Clear Shore development. A few hours later, the article dropped. Local HOA claims right to historic lake. Who really owns Clear Shore? By Owen Blake, Tennessee Tribune. The piece was exactly what I expected. A photo of the lake taken at golden hour. Karen smiling in front of a freshly printed map, gesturing at the shoreline like she was giving a TED Talk. The article quoted her extensively about generational privilege, unfair land monopolization, and community stewardship. According to her, I was some trust fund lawyer playing king of the hill, a selfish man squatting on what she called an ecological jewel meant to be shared. She even said my cameras were invasive surveillance tools meant to intimidate families. That one almost made me spit out my coffee. I didn't respond publicly. Not yet, but the backlash started immediately. By noon, someone dumped 2 more bags of trash on my trail. By evening, my inbox was flooded with hate mail. "You're everything wrong with this country." "Greedy bastard." "Land doesn't belong to people, it belongs to God." One guy offered to come liberate the lake personally. That night, someone egged my truck. Next morning, I checked the footage. 2 teenagers laughing, both in Clear Shore hoodies. I printed stills, brought them to the sheriff's office. Langston promised to follow up, but I could see the weariness in his eyes. This was getting bigger than neighborhood squabbles. What Karen hadn't counted on was the digital footprint she left behind. I'd started digging, slowly, methodically, through HOA newsletters, archived posts, LinkedIn profiles, zoning requests, even real estate listings. In one of those glossy flyers, I found something gold, a listing from 5 years ago describing Clearshore Waterside as nestled beside a serene private lake. Private, not shared, not HOA managed, just a nice, scenic neighbor. I sent it to Owen. Didn't say anything, just attached the file and wrote, "Thought you might find this useful." To his credit, he responded in less than an hour. "Interesting. Karen didn't mention this. Mind if we talk?" I said no. Told him he was already neck deep in the narrative and I wasn't interested in playing the villain for clicks. He didn't push, just replied, "I think you're right, and I think she's lying." That was the first shift. Over the next few days, Owen started contacting other residents, quietly. A few reached out to me, anonymous email addresses, messages with subject lines like, "She threatened me too," or "We didn't vote." One of them, a guy named Grayson, said he'd been on the HOA board 2 years earlier before resigning over Karen's power grabs. I met him in the back of a diner off Route 31. He wore sunglasses inside like he thought HOA had spies. Maybe they did. "She cooks the votes," he said, sipping lukewarm coffee. "People just assume the board's legitimate because she posts everything on letterhead." "You know about the fake map?" I asked. He nodded. "She had it printed 6 months ago. Said we were gonna correct historical errors." I told her it was illegal. She told me to go work for the county if I loved maps so much. "You got proof?" He pulled out a flash drive. "Meeting recordings." She didn't know I was backing up Zoom calls. I took the drive, bought his breakfast, didn't ask why he waited until now. I already knew. Karen ruled Clearshore with an iron HOA fist and a pile of social credit. People didn't want trouble. They wanted quiet lives and neatly trimmed lawns. That evening, I set up 3 speakers on my dock, pointed them toward the Clearshore Trail, and at full volume, I played a 5-minute loop of Karen screaming from a now viral clip taken the previous week. The footage had been captured on one of my cams, her storming down to the lake, shouting at one of her own workers who'd been caught slacking during the failed dock build. At one point, she shrieked, "This is our lake! He's not going to gatekeep the water like he owns it." I edited in the deed overlay as a watermark just for good measure. Within 24 hours, the video had over 70,000 views. Reddit picked it up. Memes started circulating. Someone photoshopped Karen's face onto a pirate holding a community property flag. That's when the real press came knocking. Local stations ran quick hits, but it was a regional news affiliate that showed up with cameras. I declined interviews, but they aired the footage anyway. Karen's outburst, the illegal construction, the trespassing citations. Suddenly, she wasn't the valiant community leader anymore, and she did not take it well. 3 nights later, I came home from town to find my tires slashed. All 4. A note was tucked under the windshield, scrawled in red Sharpie. "Stop being a coward, share the lake, or we take it." Sheriff's deputies came. Again. Photos were taken, reports filed. I gave them the footage from my driveway cam. It didn't catch faces, but it caught shadows. 2 people, hooded, 1 limping slightly. I was done playing defense. The next morning, I filed for a temporary restraining order against the HOA and named Karen personally. My lawyer sent her a formal warning about further harassment, and then I gave Owen the green light. We met in person for the first time at a bench overlooking the lake. He listened for over an hour, barely speaking, just nodding. When I was done, he asked one thing. "Can I publish everything? Every last goddamn detail?" He did. 3 days later, Tennessee Tribune ran the headline, "The War Over Clearshore, How a HOA Tried to Steal a Private Lake and Got Caught." Karen stopped responding to emails after that, but the damage was already done. I've filed lawsuits before, hundreds, maybe thousands, over a decade of legal practice, but filing this one, this was personal. We didn't go small. My legal team, 2 former colleagues from my Memphis firm and 1 real estate litigation specialist from Nashville, filed a full battery. Trespassing, defamation, attempted fraudulent annexation, unlawful construction, malicious interference with private property, and civil conspiracy. We served both the Clearshore Waterside HOA and Karen Lindell individually. The complaint was 172 pages long. My favorite sentence: "The defendants have engaged in an organized, systematic campaign to exert fraudulent dominion over land to which they have neither historical claim nor legal right. We didn't just accuse, we laid out receipts, maps, drone footage, Deeds from 1972, signed and sealed. Witness testimony from Grayson, the former board member. Audio files, meeting logs. The whole Karen-verse collapsed into one airtight case. We filed it on a Monday. By Tuesday, my driveway was lined with 3 news vans and a parade of folding chairs. Some kind of spontaneous HOA rally had sprung up on the trailhead. They brought signs. End lake apartheid. Community water for community people. Say no to greed. A guy with a guitar was singing something that sounded like a protest folk song, but had the lyrical depth of a wet sponge. Karen wasn't among them, but her influence lingered like cheap perfume. I called the sheriff again. They came out, reviewed the property line, and started issuing dispersal orders. One woman screamed, "Fascist!" at Deputy Langston. He didn't blink. Meanwhile, Owen Blake was digging deeper. His next article dropped like a bomb. From realtor to tyrant. The real Karen behind Clearshore's land grab. It wasn't just about me anymore. Owen found court records from a different county, where Karen had once been sued for misrepresenting a property's access rights. He spoke to former colleagues who called her unhinged, obsessed with control, and the kind of person who sends 3 follow-up emails about the height of your fence. One described her as a mix of Martha Stewart and Mussolini. The HOA board tried to distance themselves. A public statement was released calling the lawsuit unfounded and labeling me an embittered landholder clinging to outdated documents. But then came the emails. Grayson, bless his paranoid little heart, had saved everything, including a thread where Karen explicitly instructed board members to create visual legitimacy by distributing signs along the lake, even on non-assigned parcels. Another gem. If the public sees a boundary enough times, they believe it. We build the narrative first. Legal comes second. We sent it all to the court. During the preliminary hearing, Karen showed up in a white blazer and oversized sunglasses like she was about to testify in front of Congress. She didn't speak much. Her lawyer did the talking, but when the judge read the first page of our complaint and looked over the map overlays, he raised an eyebrow. You're asserting ownership over land that has been deeded private since the Nixon administration. Yes, Your Honor, said Karen's lawyer. We believe the original boundaries are legally ambiguous. Ambiguous, the judge repeated, then pointed to a highlighted section. This says exclusive access deeded in perpetuity to the Jacobs family line. That's not ambiguous. That's carved in stone. Karen didn't flinch. She sat stiff as granite, but I could see it in her eyes. The flicker of realization that the hill she chose to die on wasn't legally hers to stand on. We pushed for a temporary injunction, immediate enforcement of property boundaries, removal of all Clearshore signs, and a gag order preventing further HOA communications claiming lake access. The judge granted all 3. Karen's smile cracked like a frozen windshield. Outside the courthouse, Owen caught up with me. She's going to spin it, he warned. You just humiliated a woman who's built her personality around controlling other people. She'll double down before she folds. I know, I said. That's why we're not done. By the end of that week, the injunction was posted on every major entrance to the lake. HOA members were prohibited from stepping onto my land. Cameras were updated, security lights added. I even hired a private guard, retired state trooper, calm guy named Walter with a mustache that could deflect bullets. Still, they tested it. One night, Walter called me at 2 a.m. Sir, he said, calm as ever. We've got a group of teenagers on kayaks trying to launch from your North Shore. I pulled on jeans, drove down. By the time I got there, they were gone. Just a few floating chip bags and a damp hoodie left behind. But tied to one of the dock rails was another message, written in marker on the back of a pizza box. You can't own nature. The irony wasn't lost on me. A group of HOA-raised kids breaking into private property to deliver a philosophical protest wrapped in junk food packaging. Karen had infected them with her fantasy, this idea that the law didn't matter, only perception. I snapped a photo, added it to the file. The real trial was still weeks away, but Clearshore was already cracking. It started with the newsletter. Every Clearshore waterside resident received it, printed and hand-delivered by what was left of the HOA board. It had Karen's signature across the top in her usual all-caps, cursive hybrid, and read like a Cold War propaganda leaflet. They want to take our voice. They want to silence our community. We must stand together. She called the court's injunction illegitimate, blamed outside influence, and insisted that no judge can erase a community's will. She claimed I was using deep money to suppress natural rights, and compared the lake to a national park held hostage by a tyrant in a suit. I laughed when I read it, but by the third paragraph, it didn't feel funny anymore. She wasn't trying to win. She was radicalizing. The backlash began almost immediately. Half a dozen homeowners publicly resigned from the HOA on social media. Someone started a Facebook group called Clear Shore Doesn't Speak for Me. Within 2 days, it had 400 members. A Reddit post quoting the newsletter's more unhinged lines hit the front page of Our Air-Ho Nightmares, and the comments were brutal. Then came the incident at the board meeting. Karen had called it as an emergency session to address community betrayal. It was supposed to be open to residents only, but someone leaked video. She stood at the podium, red-faced and trembling, waving the court order in one hand and shouting into the mic, "They want us divided. They want to steal from our children, from our future. But I will not let some arrogant Hill lawyer destroy what we built." Several people walked out mid-speech. One man yelled, "It's not your damn lake, Karen." The video went viral by morning. I was at the hardware store when a woman stopped me in the parking lot. Early 50s, sensible haircut, looked like she owned 3 Labradors. "You're Harris, right?" she asked. "Lake guy." "That's me. I just wanted to say, I used to be on her side. I really did. But this is cult shit." She shook her head and walked away before I could thank her. Karen was spiraling, and everyone could see it, except her. A few days later, I got an alert on my phone from one of the shoreline cameras. Motion detected near the old pine path around midnight. I pulled up the feed. 3 people, hooded, flashlights off. One carried a long object, metal maybe, looked like a crowbar or pipe. They moved fast, quiet, hugging the tree line. 10 minutes later, another alert. Camera 2, near the south dock. They'd reached the edge of the platform, and then static. They'd taken out the camera. I called Walter, who was already en route. He called the sheriff. By the time they arrived, the trespassers were gone, but not without leaving their mark. The dock had been vandalized, bolts loosened, one of the planks pried up and halfway removed. My private property signs had been torn down, spray paint on the side of the boathouse read, "Fraud." I submitted everything to the sheriff. Langston was pissed now. This was no longer a civil matter. "We're opening a criminal case," he told me. "This goes past property lines. This is coordinated." Karen's fingerprints weren't directly on it, but we both knew. Then came the real twist. Grayson, the former board member who'd given me the flash drive, sent me a voicemail. "She's losing it, Harris," he said. "I just got a letter from her lawyer asking me to retract my statement. Said if I don't, they'll sue me for defamation. I've got nothing left to lose, man. So I'm giving you the whole file." He sent it that evening. Meeting minutes, internal votes, lists of residents who had never consented to the land grab. One email was a smoking gun, Karen admitting that the Jacobs family deed will never hold up in the court of public opinion. Not law, not fact. Public opinion. I handed it all to my lawyers. The second motion we filed was for punitive damages, arguing intentional malice, coordinated defamation, and reputational harm. The number we attached, $3.1 million. That figure spread fast. By the end of the week, HOA members were abandoning ship en masse, some quietly, some with public Facebook posts. I've withdrawn all support. I was misled. I thought she was trying to protect the neighborhood, but this has gone too far. A few brave ones came forward with more documentation, proof that Karen had strong-armed them into approving funds for lake-related signage without full votes. One man said she called him unpatriotic for questioning the HOA's expansion. And then, she snapped. It was a Saturday afternoon. Warm, blue sky. I was down by the dock replacing the broken planks when I heard shouting. Karen was on my shoreline. She was flanked by 2 people I didn't recognize. Maybe board members, maybe just loyalists. She marched up to the edge of my dock, eyes wild, hair frizzed from the heat, holding what looked like another HOA flyer. "This isn't over," she barked. "You think money buys the truth? You think this land is yours just because of some paper?" I stood up slowly. "Karen, you're trespassing. Again." "This is community property," she screamed. "You're the invader. This lake doesn't belong to one man. It belongs to us all." I pulled out my phone, hit record. "You need to leave. Right now." She stepped closer. "Or what? You'll sue me again. Bury me in court like you buried your grandfather in this dirt." That was the moment I saw it in her eyes, the crack. Not anger, not strategy, desperation. Walter arrived just in time, hand on his holster, calm as ever. "Ma'am," he said, "you're violating a court order. Step off the property." She hesitated, then dropped the flyer in the dirt and stormed back toward the woods, the two hangers-on trailing behind her like deflated balloons. The whole thing was caught on camera. I sent it to the court. And Owen. His article the next morning read, "Clear Shore Civil War. HOA President melts down on private property, defies court." The thumbnail was a still frame of Karen mid-shout, hair caught in the wind, finger jabbing at nothing. It looked like a woman arguing with ghosts. Courtroom 3 at the Wilson County Courthouse was packed, not just with lawyers and press, but with townspeople, retirees in tennis shoes, teenagers with TikTok dreams, HOA members who hadn't been seen in public for weeks, even someone selling Team Harris t-shirts out of a cardboard box outside. The case had become more than property lines and bylaws. It had become theater, and Karen was about to be center stage. We entered through the side. My team was prepared. Binders, exhibit boards, USB drives with screen captures, audio clips, aerial footage. They knew this case like they'd written the laws themselves. I came in wearing a plain black suit and a face that said I didn't start this, but I'm damn sure finishing it. Karen sat at the other table, flanked by two attorneys, face taut like overpulled upholstery. She didn't look around, didn't wave. Just stared at the table, eyes locked on the folder in front of her like it might explode. The judge was Honorable Meredith Klein, late 60s, no nonsense, and well known for her distaste for HOA drama. Perfect. My lawyer began with a simple phrase. This case is about one thing, ownership. Everything else is noise. Then we laid it out. Exhibit A, my grandfather's original deed from 1972. Reaffirmed by the county 6 times over 50 years. Exhibit B, aerial photos from 5, 10, 20 years ago, unbroken private use. Exhibit C, the false map circulated by the HOA claiming the lake as common use, complete with manipulated overlays. Exhibit D, Grayson's email thread showing Karen's plan to manufacture visual legitimacy and shape perception first. Exhibit E, video of Karen's shoreline meltdown. Exhibit F, audio from a board meeting where Karen said, "Legal won't matter if the public backs us." Each item landed like a hammer. Her defense tried the usual. Ambiguity, intent to protect community interest, fluid boundaries. They claimed the map was a draft, never formally distributed. They said I was hostile to dialogue, eager to litigate, bent on privatizing a shared resource. Then came their star witness, Glenn Crane. Only Glenn didn't cooperate. Under oath, with sweat beading on his forehead, Glenn admitted that yes, he had submitted the altered GIS boundary at Karen's request. Yes, he knew it was false. Yes, he now regretted it. No, he had not received official board authorization to do so. Karen's face didn't move, but her fingers twitched, tiny spasms like static under her skin. The real turning point came when my lawyer introduced the community manipulation thread. We pulled up a projection of Karen's email where she wrote, "Even if Jacobs has the title, he doesn't have the neighborhood. We make him the villain. We win the narrative." The judge leaned forward. "Mrs. Lindell, did you write this?" Karen's attorney objected. Overruled. Karen stared at the screen. That email was taken out of context. What context makes this acceptable? And the judge asked flatly. No answer. Then came the damages. We showed estimates of property devaluation from harassment, legal fees, vandalism, the reputational damage from being publicly smeared as a thief and tyrant. Walter even testified about the security issues, the threats, the messages left on my truck. Then came the kicker. My lawyer played a voicemail Karen had left Grayson just before the trial. If he wins, we all lose. You want to be the one who gave him the rope to hang us? Because I swear, if this goes public, I'll take everyone down with me. The courtroom was silent. You could hear people breathing. Judge Klein recessed for an hour to review everything. When we reconvened, she didn't waste time. In my 40 years on this bench, I have seen petty disputes, malicious vendettas, and bizarre interpretations of property law. But I have never seen such a coordinated, arrogant attempt to seize private land through fraud, coercion, and manipulation of a governing body meant to serve, not dominate. She looked straight at Karen. This wasn't about stewardship. It was about control. Then she gave her ruling. Full ownership of the lake and surrounding land reaffirmed to me. Harris Jacobs. A permanent injunction prohibiting any Clearshore Waterside member from accessing or claiming use of the lake. Ordered removal, at HOA's expense, of all signage, structures, and distributed materials referencing lake ownership. Karen Lindell personally liable for defamation, attempted fraudulent conveyance, and incitement. HOA ordered to pay $3.1 million in damages. All evidence referred to the district attorney for potential criminal prosecution. Karen didn't speak. Her lawyer did. He asked for a delay in enforcement. Denied. He asked for reconsideration. Denied. He asked if Karen could make a closing statement. Not today, said Judge Klein. She said more than enough. As I stepped outside, flashes from local press cameras hit like lightning. Owen Blake stood just behind the line. You were right, he said, about everything. I nodded. You got what you needed? Oh yeah, he grinned. This story's going national. 2 months after the verdict, the sign went up. A black and white slab of aluminum bolted to the center post of the dock, gleaming under the Tennessee sun. Private lake. Trespassers will be sued HOA-free zone. Walter helped me install it. We didn't say much. He just tightened the bolts, gave it a nod, and said, "Feels like peace." He wasn't wrong. The lake was quiet again. No parties, no drones, no kids kayaking into my shoreline like it was some kind of theme park. Just water, wind, and the occasional heron gliding across the surface like it had never heard the word lawsuit. Clearshore Waterside HOA didn't survive the storm. The legal costs alone gutted them. The $3.1 million judgment was only the beginning. Most of that had to be paid through emergency property assessments. Residents revolted. Half the board resigned within 2 weeks. By the end of the month, they voted to formally dissolve the HOA. The neighborhood still exists, but now it's just a neighborhood. People cut their own grass, put up whatever mailboxes they want. I even saw someone install pink flamingos in the yard and no one said a damn thing. Karen? She pled guilty to a list of charges longer than a CVS receipt: falsification of public records, harassment, property interference, defamation, and attempted fraudulent annexation. The plea deal got her 11 years. No parole for the first 6. They perp-walked her out of her own house in broad daylight. Someone filmed it from a second-story window. The audio caught her screaming, "It was supposed to be our lake," as she was stuffed into the back of a cruiser. That clip played on the news for a week. Owen Blake got a journalism award. His series The Lake War ran as a podcast, then as a 6-part investigative feature. By the time the dust settled, every HOA in the state was triple-checking their bylaws, terrified they'd be next. As for me, I didn't go back to the city. I kept the house, restored the dock, replanted some of the shoreline flora that got trampled in the chaos. And then I did something no one saw coming. I reached out to the Tennessee Wildlife Preservation Authority and proposed a partnership. Private land, yes, but managed with ecological integrity. We signed a formal stewardship agreement within a month. Now Jacobs Lake is a registered private ecological zone. No motorboats, no dumping, no development. Just protected, pristine water. A few people from town come by every so often. Rangers, researchers, students studying salamanders or aquatic ferns. They knock first. I usually invite them in, show them where the trails are. Sometimes we sit on the porch, drink coffee, and laugh about the summer of madness. But most days, it's just me and the water. One morning, maybe 6 months after it all ended, I found a letter in my mailbox. No return address. Just a piece of lined paper with a single sentence. You were right to fight. No signature. No clue who sent it. Didn't matter. The lake was still mine. And nobody called me the villain anymore.